Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in Los Angeles, California. How's everybody doing today? Here it's a little bit cool, a little bit cloudy, but sunshine is in the forecast, so that makes me pretty happy. Today, during our critter chat, we're going to talk about an amazing animal that is very well adapted for an extraordinary life. And that animal is the cheetah. Cheetahs are an amazing, unique cat species in that they have a lot of very unique things about them that differs quite a bit from the other cats. For one, they're a big size cat, but they don't really behave like the other large cats. They don't have a lot of the same features as a large cat, and in some ways they almost function more like a dog, which is pretty interesting. Traditionally, cheetahs were found throughout most of Africa, with the exception of the rainforest, but they were fairly common throughout southern Africa, eastern Africa, and all of northern Africa, except for the extreme desert of the Sahara. And they were found outside of Africa, through the Middle East and through the top part of Asia, all the way over into India. That is no longer true entirely. Historically, they used to live here in the Americas many, many thousands of years ago. But today, cheetahs are limited to sparse populations in areas of Africa and a population in the country of Iran, which is still pretty remarkable because we typically associate them with Africa. Iran is quite a bit further away from that. But their strongholds, the places where they are doing the best today, are two countries in southern Africa, Namibia and its neighbor Botswana, and then two countries in eastern Africa, Kenya and Tanzania. They are still sparsely populated in places of northern Africa, and our special shout out the Sahara Conservation Fund that has done some amazing work with northern ostriches and with the oryx up in northern Africa, also does some with the cheetahs in those areas as well. Now, cheetahs are by far the fastest land animal. That has been tested multiple times. The most recent was a cheetah named Sarah from the Cincinnati Zoo. She was actually taken over to a racetrack in southern Ohio, and they put her on a racetrack and clocked her ability to run. And when they did that, she actually set a new land speed record for an animal at 72 miles an hour. So by far the fastest. Cheetahs can also go 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. That's faster than most cars are capable of doing, and that acceleration just amazes science. They don't fully understand it, but cheetahs have really great adaptations to make them very adaptable to a high running speed. Now, although they can reach very fast speeds, they can't go that fast for very long. Their maximum distance is about 300 yards. That's about 900 feet. So yeah, is that right? No, that's not right. I'm not good at math. 300 yards, though, is about as far as they can go. That's about equivalent to 3 football fields. Or if you live in a neighborhood, that's probably as long as your block. Not much further than that. So they go very fast, very quick, but have to stop very soon because they get tired pretty easily. Which is understandable. They're going the speeds of a car on a freeway, and they're an animal running, so they're going to get tired pretty quick. One thing that's really remarkable about their run, they can go 23 feet in one stride. That means from the time that, say, their front left foot touches the ground and goes up, and then the left front foot touches the ground again, it's 23 feet further along. That's remarkable. That's really far over one stride. Also, as they're running, there are 2 points in every stride where all 4 feet are off the ground. So if you picture the animal running sideways, they have a position where their front feet are kind of tucked back and their back feet are tucked forward, and they kind of look like a little ball. All 4 feet are off the ground at that point. And then as they stretch out and their front feet are the furthest forward and their back feet are the furthest back, all 4 feet are up off the ground. And that's really amazing ability to run. To be so fast, they are a fairly good sized animal. They can be about probably around 3 feet high at the shoulder, maybe a little taller, maybe a little shorter, depending on the animal and its height. I remember when I got up close to a cheetah at Busch Gardens in Florida. They had a window in their exhibit, so you could stand right next to where the cheetah was standing, and I was amazed how tall that cheetah in particular was. They're about 3.5 to 4.5 feet long. They weigh about 75 to maybe 150 pounds, but they're very sleek. They're very slender, very skinny looking cats. And that's so that they can be fast. If they were stocky, like say a jaguar or a leopard, or big like a lion, they would not be able to go that fast. Cheetahs also live quite a bit differently than a lot of their other cat relatives. For one, they are more active during the daytime. Most cats tend to be more nocturnal or nighttime active, but cheetahs are diurnal, so they are daytime active. And because of that, their sense of eyesight is actually their most important sense. A lot of other cats use their nose a little more in combination with really good night vision to do their hunting. Cheetahs rely almost solely on their eyes. Typically, when they're getting ready to go look for food, they will find a high point that they can climb up onto, which that may be like a termite mound, a little hill, sometimes a tree that's easy to climb. They're not the best climbers, so they need kind of a low-lying tree that they can get up into. And sometimes it's things like a human might make or build, like a little house or a car, a truck. They definitely have climbed up on some of those vehicles to get a good vantage point, because they can see a really long distance if they can get high enough to see over the grass. With that good eyesight, they're able to kind of spot what animals they want to go hunt. And then they use their very specialized coat, their camouflage coat, that's kind of that tannish yellow color with little black spots, to very sneakily sneak through the grass to creep up on their prey species. The reason they are a daytime hunter is because, like I said, they're not that big compared to some of their other cousins, like lions and leopards, and also hyenas. Hyenas are actually bigger, way more and stronger than the cheetahs. And although a cheetah's fast, it's not able to defend its kill very well or defend itself very well. So if it's threatened or challenged by another type of predator, it's usually going to just run away. But that means that they're more successful at hunting if they hunt during the day, when most of those other animals are kind of more sleepy and laying down in the shade or their den or their trees. The cheetahs are out more during the daytime because it's safer and they can be more successful and not have their kills taken over. Although they still have about 50% of their kills are taken over by other predators or sometimes scavengers, including vultures. If enough vultures get together, they can drive a cheetah off of its kill, which is kind of sad to think that a cheetah, an amazing animal, is pushed away from its dinner by a bunch of birds. But the birds are pretty aggressive for their food. So I know it has happened. I've seen it happen in documentaries. Cheetahs also, when we think of a cat, we usually think of really big, sharp teeth. And cheetahs don't have those. They have sharp teeth. They have a decent number of teeth, but their teeth are pretty small, especially for the size of animal that they are. And that's because most of their head space, especially in this region, is taken up by their nose. And not so that they can use a big sense of smell, but another really important factor in being able to run fast is they have to be able to absorb a lot of air in a quick amount of time. So they have big nostrils and a really big nasal passage, nasal cavity, that lets a lot of air come into their body and down into their also oversized lungs that help them to breathe really quickly and really well, so that they can go that high, fast speed. But because they have small teeth, they have to struggle and work a little bit harder to catch their food. Some of those big teeth are how a lot of animals catch and kill their food, like a jaguar, a lion, or a leopard, tigers also. But cheetahs' teeth are a little smaller, so they have to do things a little bit differently. Typically on an animal that's been killed by a cheetah, initially from the kill, you're not going to see a lot of wound marks on that animal. They're not going to tear the animal apart really quickly because their claws are also quite a bit different. So if you've ever played with a house cat that has claws, you know that those claws go in and out. They're sometimes out of their paws and they're really sharp, or they're sometimes they can retract them and then you don't feel them at all. If you've ever played with a dog's paw, you know that the claws are always out, but the claws are pretty blunt. They're not super sharp on the edges and they're always there. And cheetah's paws and claws are a lot more like a dog's paws than a cat's paws. So their claws are always out and they can only go in a tiny bit. But there's an important function for that, and that's so as they're running so fast, those claws help them have good traction. So they don't use their claws to catch food like the other cat species do. They use their claws as traction when they're running. If you think of runner shoes, if you've ever seen those, or sometimes like athletes who use cleats for playing sports, those usually have little bumps on them or little spikes even on some of them to help grip and give good traction. Cheetahs use their claws the same way. Other cats, when they run, their claws are retracted. Their claws are hidden because they need those claws to be sharp to help catch their food. Cheetahs catch food entirely by, well, they first try to push an animal down, then they try to bite it with their mouth. And without getting too gory into it, they try to suffocate their prey by crushing their windpipe, their throat, so that the animal can't breathe. That's their main way of killing their animals that they eat. Another thing that's kind of crazy and cool about cheetahs, if you've ever looked at a cheetah's face, or if you look at the picture I posted earlier of a cheetah, you can see they have black lines right under their ears, or sorry, under their eyes, that run kind of alongside their nose and down to their mouth. They call those tear marks. If you think of an eye that cries, that's kind of where the tear would run. But those black lines actually give them some anti-glare protection as they're out in the bright sun in Africa. That's usually a hot, dry place for many times of the year. That helps them to be able to see far distances without a glare. Kind of like, again, like athletes, if you've ever seen football players sometimes smear a grease paint under their eye, or baseball players, that will help reduce the glare they may see in looking a far distance on a sunny day. Cheetahs have that built in with their tear marks. What else? Where were we talking? Oh, cheetahs also cannot roar. So lions, tigers, leopards, jaguars, they all roar. They have a specialized vocal box in their throat that helps them to make that very loud booming sound that they can communicate for miles and miles in any direction. Lions are most famous for it, but the other big cats can roar as well. Cheetahs, no, they don't do that. Sorry, I got distracted. My dog's out here again today. She's running around through the bushes. Cheetahs cannot roar though. Instead, their vocalizations include kind of softer, quieter sounds like purrs and hissing, low growls, and their most common sound is actually something called a chirp. And if that sounds like something a bird makes instead of a cat, that's very much what it sounds like. And if you can hear birds out here with me today, chirping in the trees, that's actually what cheetahs sound like. They sound more like birds. Now there's a couple good reasons for this. They don't want to draw attention from any of those other big cats. So if they make a sound similar to something that's kind of smaller and a minor animal out there compared for like a lion or a leopard or hyenas, they'll just hear that sound and they'll think, oh, it's birds. No big deal, I'm gonna keep sleeping. But really it's maybe cheetahs talking to each other, especially a mom with baby cheetahs, or sometimes male cheetahs talking to each other. And they also use their sense of smell as an important communication tool for them. And in case you don't know how cats communicate through sense of smell, it's through their pee and their poop, which I know some of the kids really enjoy hearing about. Anything pee or poop related, that's how a lot of cats communicate, and cheetahs are no different there. So scent markings are very important. They'll typically pee on like a big tree or an important rock, and that kind of helps for the male cats, the male cheetahs, to determine their boundaries, their territories. For the female cats, that's important for them to know like which male's territory they may be in. They can kind of help differentiate that. The other great adaptation cheetahs have for their running is their tail. And you're thinking, well, how does their tail help them run? And there's some really cool videos out there that show this. So I'm hoping I can find a good one to put up on the Facebook profile later today. As they run, their big long tail kind of spins around behind them, and that helps them to steer as they're going so fast. And that's really important because one of their main things that they eat are small gazelles called Thompson's gazelles. That's kind of their favorite food, or any small antelope, but Thompson's gazelles are kind of their favorite. Those little gazelles are really good at when they run, they do zigzag patterns. So they'll run this way for a bit and then they'll turn back and go that way and then zigzag back and forth. That's their best defense strategy. They know that the cheetah's faster, but they try to outmaneuver and turn really quick, and then that can maybe help them get away from the cheetah. Now the cheetah, he can't turn as quick as a gazelle can, but with his big tail spinning around behind him, it can help him steer, and so he can turn a little better than say like a lion or some other animals would be able to. Definitely more than like the African painted dogs can, because their tails are much smaller. They can't use those as well to help them steer. If you think about it, house cats actually use their tails quite a bit too to help them balance, especially if you've ever seen them walk along a fence. They'll kind of hold their tail up and lean it a certain way if they're walking on a fence or along something really skinny. And cats are pretty good at using their tail to help them balance. Also when they're climbing in trees, specifically the big cats like a leopard or a jaguar would use that. Little cats, house cats, can use their tail that way as well. So in addition to those small gazelles that cheetahs eat, they will sometimes also eat birds or rabbits or things along that size line, and they'll go after babies of bigger species. So typically they won't go after anything bigger than like 100 to maybe 150 pounds, something that's not gonna weigh much more than them. But occasionally they will, especially if it's a mom with older cubs and she has a lot of mouths to feed, she'll be a little more brave and a little more daring. Typically with cheetahs, when they kill something, they eat as much as they can at that time, and then they're gone. They leave it. Sometimes things like a lion or another big cat, maybe a leopard, will eat on that same thing for a couple of days. Cheetahs, that's not the case. They're not able to defend their food from other predators or scavengers, and so they'll kill it, they'll eat as much as they can, and then they're out. They leave it and leave the rest for other animals to come and eat. Cheetahs are fairly successful hunters. They have about a 50% kill rate. That's because they're faster than anything they're trying to hunt. And if they can knock it over and get that suffocating grip on the animal's neck, they're usually successful. Now, I also said they lose about 50% of their kills to those other hunters and to some of the scavengers. So they have to be pretty successful because about half the time they're not even going to be able to get their meal. They typically hunt out in the open, in the grassland, and then they'll pull their food over to like a shady tree where they can kind of catch their breath, rest, cool down a little from their run and then start to eat. So sometimes by the time they've cooled down and pulled their food over to the shade, they unfortunately lose their food before that time. Cheetahs also have really special and unique social structures. So with most cats, like tigers, leopards, jaguars, most of those cats, they're usually completely solitary unless it's a mom with kittens. Lions are a big exception in that they're very social and they live in a family group kind of at all times. Cheetahs sit right in the middle of that. So a mom with kittens, yeah, we expect that. That happens quite a bit. When she doesn't have kittens, she is usually alone. But her home range, she doesn't necessarily have a territory that she tries to defend. She just kind of wanders around a familiar space that she knows, and that could be very large, but it can overlap with other female cheetahs and go in and out of several territories of several different males. If she encounters another female cheetah, they're not gonna fight. They're gonna be like, hey, what's up? And kind of just keep going. They're not really social with other female cheetahs, but they're not aggressive with them either. Male cheetahs, different story. So male cheetahs are actually a lot more social than most other cats, and they usually live in a small group. And scientists call that group a coalition. It's usually really had battery issues. I'm back. They're usually related, so it's usually a group of brothers, often from the same litter. So they're grew up together, they're the same age, all those good things. And it's usually 2 or 3, rarely 4 animals. Sometimes they're not related. And sometimes they might be cousins that grew up from different moms who were sisters in very close proximity. And if this mom cheetah only had 1 boy and this mom cheetah had 1 boy, those 2 boys might meet up and start a coalition together. Sometimes they're completely unrelated, but that is more rare. So it's usually littermate brothers that hang out together. And they will hang out together as a coalition their entire lives. And the reason they can do this is, again, cheetahs aren't really built for defending themselves, but they do need to kind of defend, males at least, defend a territory. So they have a specific territory that they defend from other male cheetahs. They know that lions may be there, hyenas may be there, they may have several different females that cross their paths, but they kind of stake out a little claim, and what they're really looking for is a territory that has good prey, good food available. It's like choosing a house that's close to a grocery store. It makes a lot of sense, so you don't have to go for very far when you're hungry. But the coalition of cheetah males allows them to hunt slightly bigger animals. Typically, female cheetahs go after things about their same weight or smaller, occasionally a little bigger. Male cheetahs, if they're a coalition that works really well together, can go after things 2 or sometimes even 3 times bigger than they are. And it's pretty remarkable, and it's kind of newer science. People had seen it before and thought it was always like, oh, this is weird, these cheetahs are hanging out together. But they didn't realize that that's kind of common across all of cheetahs, that these male cheetahs do that. So it's kind of in the last 20 years that science has accepted a little bit more that that's how male social cheetahs work. But with that, they can go after bigger things. So like medium-sized antelopes, things like maybe a kudu or ostrich they sometimes will go after, or maybe a small zebra. But when there's 2 or 3 of them hunting, one will make the initial hunt, bring the animal down, and then the others rush in to kind of help do the suffocation grip on the animal's throat. Cheetahs do have very strong jaws, but they have little teeth, so they have to hold that for quite a while to be able to successfully hunt. Let's talk a little bit about baby cheetahs. Their gestation, or the pregnancy of a cheetah, is typically about 3 months. I did see somebody specifically said 93 days, which that's kind of amazing that they know specific 93 days. But sometimes scientists, and this scientist is the cheetah expert, so if she says 93 days, I'm gonna believe her because she knows what she's talking about. Her name is Dr. Laurie Marker, and she is the world-renowned cheetah expert in the world. So she says 93 days, I believe her. When the cheetah cubs are born, they're about 12 ounces, so they're less than a pound in weight, and they're born pretty weak but very furry, with their eyes closed. And then by 6 weeks, which is pretty young, they're able to follow their mom out for hunts. They don't do any of the hunting at that age, but they'll follow her as she goes hunting. Prior to that 6-week age, they stay behind and she'll leave them to go hunt. So from about 6 weeks old to 6 months old, they just kind of follow, and then they'll come and help eat when she catches something. At about 6 months old, she'll start training them to be hunters. And cheetah moms are pretty amazing in how they do this. They'll actually catch something small, but they'll keep it alive until the cubs get there. And then she'll let her paws and her mouth off of it and let it get up and start to run again to allow the cubs to start chasing it. And that enables her cubs to start learning how to hunt. And cheetah moms, if they can get their cubs to that age where they can start hunting on their own, are usually fairly successful. Before that time, a lot of cheetah cubs don't make it. It's pretty risky for a cheetah cub because they don't really live in like a den or necessarily trees or anything. They're kind of out in the grasslands, and the mom will kind of just pick like some big grass or bushes to have her babies underneath. So a lot of things will sometimes kill cheetah cubs if they find them. But the cubs, when they're that age, about 6 months old, to where they start to go hunting with mom a little bit more, they are born with really long hair. It's kind of grayish color, and it's really fluffy. I'll find some pictures of baby cheetahs. They're absolutely adorable. But as they start to grow older, that hair starts to fall out, and then they start to look more like a regular cheetah with short hair that's a little more yellow in color. Now, cheetahs can live about 8 to 10 years out in the wild. Some individuals have lived a little longer. I know I saw some cheetahs that were over 10 years old when I was in Kenya. I'll talk about them a bit in just a moment. In a zoo setting or in a captive setting where they don't have to defend their food from other cheetahs or from other predators stealing it, they don't have to chase down their own food, and they have medical care from a veterinarian, they can live usually into their early teens, like 12 to 15 years old. One other thing that's kind of crazy about cheetahs, genetically, they are all very, very closely related genetically. If you look at the genes of this cheetah and the genes of a cheetah, say a cheetah that was born at a zoo in San Diego, and you look at genetics of a cheetah that's lived in wild in Africa, genetically, they're gonna be almost as close as, for sure as close as siblings, maybe as close genetically as twins. That's pretty crazy. But what scientists think happened about 10,000 years ago, they think that the population of cheetahs got so low that there was maybe just a handful of cheetahs that survived, and then they've since bounced back quite a bit. So genetically, they are still very closely related, and because of that, disease is a big part of problems for cheetahs. And so if they get any diseases from like humans or livestock or domestic cats or dogs, any of those diseases can be very susceptible to them because they kind of have weaker immune systems because they're all kind of, for lack of better words, they're all kind of inbred and genetically very close related. Now, out in the world today, or in the wild today, there's about 6,600 cheetahs, which is not very many. If you think about a good size like concert venue or sporting arena, that's not even gonna come close to filling up the number of seats. If you put a cheetah in every seat, you would have way more empty seats than full seats at any of those big arenas. So it's not very many that are out there. They are listed as vulnerable, which is not as bad as endangered, and that's because there's some really great people doing some amazing work to help cheetahs out. So the big threats out there threatening cheetahs, again, those are all caused by people. There's kind of three different groups of threats. The first one is human and wildlife conflict. Cheetahs need very big open spaces. They need a variety of areas where there's lots of different animals coming through at different times of the year that they can eat. They don't do as well in like a national park setting because those areas tend to have higher numbers of other predators like lions, hyenas, maybe wild dogs, leopards, and those animals will be stealing the cheetah's prey and killing cheetah cubs. And so cheetahs actually do a little better in non-protected areas where there's maybe more farmers, people raising goats, cows, chickens, that kind of thing. So with that, if you're out there raising goats and you find a dead goat and then you see a cheetah, you may really blame the cheetah. And since cheetahs are active during the daytime, cheetahs probably get blamed a lot more than other animals because the people see them more, even though it might be hyenas killing the goats or leopards coming, or a smaller cat like a caracal or a serval coming after the chickens or jackals. The cheetah might get blamed more because it gets seen more during the day. And so people who are raising animals in Africa, unfortunately, take it out on cheetahs quite often. Something that one of these conservation organizations is doing to help mitigate or change that is they raise very specialized dogs to help guard the goats or the chickens or the sheep or the cows, whatever it is. And that helps to scare away the cheetahs and keep those other animals safe from other predators as well. There's a specific breed of dog called an Anatolian Shepherd. That's an amazing herding dog that they use throughout Africa and parts of the Middle East and Asia to help watch over those flock or herd animals to help keep them safe. And specifically, the Cheetah Conservation Fund helps raise and train those dogs and helps supply those to farmers who are looking to protect their herd animals from predators. The second big problem with cheetahs is loss of habitat and prey. And that's a big part of the problem with many animals in Africa as people continue to move out into the what used to be the countryside and grow more crops or build cities, build dams, build roads. That all causes problems. And as people continue to grow in those areas, they are also sometimes hunting the same animals that the cheetah may need for food. So loss of habitat and loss of prey is their second one. Now the third one is pretty sad, but it's definitely a problem for cheetahs. It's poaching and the pet trade. Historically, cheetahs were revered as anybody powerful would want to own a cheetah. There's artwork from Egypt, Mesopotamia, other areas of like the Middle East, where pet cheetahs were sometimes used by the king or the rich families in the area to help go hunting for birds or for small animals, rabbits, that kind of thing. Similar to like how some people use dogs to help them hunt, people would sometimes use a cheetah to help them hunt. And then it also has since become kind of a status symbol thing. So a lot of people who have a lot of money want to show off their wealth. They want to have a big, beautiful, impressive pet. And cheetahs are still often caught as cubs and used for the pet trade. And a big part of that problem is that baby cheetahs are very specific needs. And because they have those weird genetics we talked about, where they're all kind of related, they're very susceptible to disease. And so if you take baby cheetahs away from their mom, not very many of them are going to survive. Specifically, the numbers that I've seen is 1 in 6 may survive to be somebody's pet. And so that means if you're out there gathering baby cheetahs to go sell to be pets and you take 6 of them out of the wild, only 1 is going to live long enough for you to sell it to be somebody's pet. And that's a big part of a problem with a lot of different kind of animals, but I find it particularly disturbing with cheetahs. They are not pets. They should not be pets. They don't make good pets, and they do better out on their own in the wilds of Africa, not locked up in some rich person's house where they can't run and they can't find food for themselves. With that, they are also sometimes poached or killed for their coats. They have very beautiful pattern. Especially in modern society, that is completely unnecessary. With fabrics, we can make fake cheetah looking fur really easily. Cheetah print is gorgeous. I highly recommend owning a cheetah print shirt or pants or whatever you want to do. But don't use the real thing. Use fake fabric that looks like cheetahs. It's also not going to be so itchy or so hot. So yeah, use cheetah print fake fabrics, not real cheetah print, and you can help out. So our special shout outs today are the Cheetah Conservation Fund. That was started by Dr. Laurie Marker, who is the #1 cheetah expert in the world. She operates out of Namibia, which is one of those 4 countries that has really healthy cheetah populations. That's down in like southern Africa on the Atlantic coast. And it's mostly a very dry, deserty kind of country, but she's done amazing work there. And she started making a network of other organizations in different countries to help cheetahs in other places. But her work in Namibia kind of took a lot of her time. And so she had a good friend who helped create another organization. Cheetahs in Kenya was started by Dr. Laurie Marker's friend. Her name is Mary Waneka, and she does really amazing work in Kenya. So we have 2 really smart women who are very experts in cheetahs who are running these 2 different organizations that are really doing a lot of good help for cheetahs. And so special shout out to them. I'll be posting some links with their websites in a little later. Before we wrap up today, I want to just talk a little bit about my experience with cheetahs. When I worked at the Phoenix Zoo in Arizona, we had cheetahs as part of the animals in our collection there. And although I was not a zookeeper there, I was a zoo educator, and I always loved to take some time to help people see the cheetahs, to find out where they were, especially on a hot day in Phoenix. The cheetahs would rest under trees, and it was amazing how quickly they could camouflage into their exhibit. And so to help people find a cheetah was really fulfilling, because a lot of people would just walk by the exhibit and say, oh, it's not in there. And if you took a moment to look, you could usually find it. But when I went to Africa, I was also very excited, because when I got to go to Africa, I actually I saw multiple times one of the first very well documented cheetah coalitions. So they lived at Lewa Wildlife Conservancy. That's where I visited. And they were called the Cheetah Brothers, although they think 2 were maybe brothers from the same litter, and the 3rd was maybe either a cousin or an older sibling from a different previous litter. He didn't seem as close as the other 2. But the 3 of them lived for a very long time in Kenya. I think when the last one died, they estimated him to be 13, which is pretty long life for a wild cheetah. But they were very well documented. They were also filmed hunting ostrich, and that is in the documentary Life. If you've ever seen that, it shows them hunting an ostrich successfully, which is pretty amazing. Those ostriches can weigh about 300 pounds, and they stand about 8 feet tall. So that's a pretty big animal for cheetahs to successfully hunt. And the Cheetah Brothers in Kenya were experts at it. They saw that happen multiple times and were able to document it on film for that, I believe it's BBC documentary. But when I saw them, I also saw them hunt, which was one of my greatest things that I've ever observed in the natural world. They were not successful on the hunt that I saw, but it was still remarkable to see how they would sneak through the grass and how they would communicate with each other. And when they were hunting, they were going after a baby zebra. There was a herd of zebras, about 15 of them, and they were specifically targeting a baby. Now, the baby zebra was not a newborn zebra. It had been up and running with the herd for a while. It probably weighed over 100 pounds and would have for sure been a very good meal for these cheetahs to get, but a very risky one to go after, because zebras are pretty smart, they're very fast, and they will protect themselves, and that's why they weren't successful. But to see the cheetahs kind of sneak in to get closer to the zebras, and then we saw the first cheetah dart after the zebras and get them moving, and then the other two cheetahs took off shortly after that to come with, was amazing. And in our truck out in the grasslands, we were not able to keep up with them while they were hunting, but we did go to where the cheetahs ended up stopping and resting, and we saw that they did not successfully kill the zebra, and we saw the zebras across the valley at that point and knew that they were all still there. But really remarkable, the cheetah. I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared with you today in today's Critter Chat. I didn't see any questions pop up. Let me see if anybody posed any questions. No questions popped up today, so I won't try to answer anything that wasn't asked. But I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared. Feel free to like, subscribe, follow, and share any of the content on Zoo Nerd, and join the Zoo Nerd community on the Facebook profile. That way we can share some maybe homework ideas or pictures, drawings, any notes, or if you have questions, that would be a great place to ask those as well. And I'll be putting up additional information later on today on the Facebook profile, as well as I might be able to get something on Instagram. It's a little tricky. Also, full episodes of this are always uploaded to Facebook and YouTube, with a partial episode being shared on Instagram and in the Instagram stories. Also, a special shout out to my nephew Landon. Today is his birthday, so if he's watching or if he watches this later, happy birthday, Landon. Hope you're having fun. He loves animals like I do, so I'm very excited for him. And until tomorrow, I'll see you. Be happy, take care of yourself, stay safe. Have a good day.